Uncooked, unfiltered, raw. No, I'm not Vince McMahon. It is I, Travis, once again here, Union Smack Retro Review in the house right here on the channel, Hibiki TMD. I am good. Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving in the U.S. Someone who didn't have a Thanksgiving because he's not from the U.S., my co-host, Matt. What's going on, man? Good to have you back. It's been a minute. How you been? Where can everyone catch you?
I've been unsurprisingly busy, but yeah, it's good to be back, Travis, with you, doing some more retro reviews, talking more wrestling, and you can catch me, as always, on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. You can buy our official merchandise, the official Union Smack shirt, a Hibiki TMD shirt, Reset Button shirt, Tenant Talk shirt, Hall of Fame shirt, which will be returning most likely after Christmas and in the new year now, from our online shop, unionsmack.bigcartel.com, and in the first few months of 2020, you'll be able to buy my second book, NXT UK Year 1. It is close to completion.
Very nice. Looking forward to that immensely. Thank you, my friend. Good to have you back. And as always on Twitter, you can follow me at the Hibiki TMD. That little red button right down there. Hit it. All the goodness, retro gaming and pro wrestling. Oh my, oh my, oh my. Once again, the word goodness starts off an episode, and that is definitely where I feel like we're headed today. One of my favorite Survivor Series pay-per-views of all time, and I don't know why, because quality-wise, Matt, Survivor Series 96 doesn't hold up to some of the great ones. I mean, let's be honest.
No, but there's some nostalgia about it. You know, I don't know whether it's, the beginning of the Attitude Era that's, that's so nostalgic, or it's just like, it's bang right in the middle of the 90s. We've just come out of the 95 down period, which was just hideous from January to December. Things picked up in 96 somewhat, and it's just, we've got fond memories of this, Travis. I think the best way to describe it is, and we don't know why.
As much as things, in a way, had picked up for them internally in 96, bigger picture, they were getting destroyed more than ever from the competition, WCW at this time, November 96. My God, I mean, they were literally, to put it visually, WCW was a big steel-toed giant boot, and WWF was little bitty goo. They're just repeatedly getting stomped in the ratings right now this time of year.
Yeah.
It wasn't even close.
You can see why. On this card was some of the talent they had. They weren't all bad, but still in 96, coming into 97, still, heavily relying on some gimmick wrestlers to carry the load.
And when you take a step back and you take this roster, just the guys featured on this pay-per-view, and you compare it to what the other team's working with, so to speak, my God, you talk about dated and out of touch. I mean, people say Vince is out of touch now. This was the epitome of Vince not listening to his inner circle and just resting on his laurels and using what used to work for him a decade ago better than anyone else. He never caught up. He did exactly what he used to criticize Vern Gagne for. He never caught up the times.
Yeah, agreed. And do you know what? My favourite SummerSlam is 93. Obviously, because as a kid, I wore that VHS out, just like you wore 96 out. But somehow 96 is even more gimmicky than 93.
I know.
So there's no progression in WWE/WWF from sort of 93, because that's 3 years, and there's no real progression. If anything, it's a backslide.
I can never remember a time in WWF's history besides the stretch from 94 to early 97 where you took a step back, you looked at the roster, and you said, my God, there's not very many credible guys on here who could be taken seriously. And this pay-per-view 96 Survivor Series is another case of that. I mean, you take a step back and look at this roster. What, you got Bulldog, you got Owen, Vader, Taker, Austin, Brett, Sid, Shawn. There's your guys. You could Farouk, maybe. That's it.
Possibly Mankind.
But yeah, Mankind, excuse me. But at this time, Mankind was just kind of cannon fodder for The Undertaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, you got Phineas Godwin, you setting the world on fire. The Stalker, Barry White, Jesus Christ. And you did say it was definitely worse the year before. Look at that roster. We talk about credible. But let's not piss on the grave of 96 WWF too much. Let's get right in. You said there was a dark match. I actually did not have the dark match written down, so enlighten me and the listeners what the dark match was. From Madison Square Garden, by the way.
The dark match was Aldo Montoya. God, 96, Bart Gunn, Bob Holly and Jesse James against Billy Gunn, Justin Hawk Bradshaw, Sultan, and Salvatore Sancia.
I stand corrected. I do remember this match because this aired on a show at the time called The Free For All that aired on the Preview channel. It was free for 30 minutes right before the pay-per-view. I do remember this. This was off. Holy shit! It's all coming back to me, Matt. Didn't the Smoking Guns, when Billy turned heel, they had a match on Raw and they worked an angle where Billy Gunn had a stinger in his neck?
Mm-hmm.
And this was like a couple weeks after that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Look at these teams right here off the bat.
So just wow. I mean, we're both speechless, Travis. I think.
I'd rather talk about that angle on Raw than anything in this match. I do remember also on that when they worked Billy having a stinger, like didn't Bart and Billy's wives come out in kayfabe and like show concern or something?
God, I think they did, yeah.
Digging so deep.
So bad.
Well, I mean, we could just segue on to what became Rockabilly.
I mean, do we have to? It's like, I feel like Smoking Guns, Billy Gunn was fine. Rockabilly was a disaster. And he hit the payload with Badass Billy Gunn.
Matt, who won this barn burner?
I think it was the Babyfaces, team of Aldo Montoya, Bart Gunn, Bob Holly, and Jesse James. I'll be honest with you, Travis. I didn't look this up until after the event, and I didn't put down who won. But I believe it's them because it came in order as I wrote it down.
These were literally the worst gimmicks on the roster, besides the Stalker Barry Windham, who made the show. Yeah, I got nothing, honestly. So let's do it. This show kicked off from Madison Square Garden, pal. You had a nice little... the network version pisses me off when they do this. Not only sometimes they overdub music they don't own the rights to, Demolition's theme come to mind, but I remember this on the VHS, the announcer at the beginning. I remember it being Todd Pettengill, and on here it wasn't Todd on the network, correct?
Was it not? I thought it was. Unless I'm thinking of a video package later on. But I could have swore it was Todd Pettengill on the network, because I watched it on the network too. And usually, because I usually watch the DVDs, but I'm sure it was Todd.
It wasn't a bad little production either. They had some little high def for the time shots of New York, like from a helicopter and the garden, and it was a nice little way to, for 96 standards, I guess, to open it up. And your commentary team, their 3-man booth in it, which will be swapped out because one of the guys, Jerry Lawler, has a match actually, but he does announce the first match or two on the show alongside heel Jim Ross and Vince McMahon. Ooh.
Now, did you notice heel Jim Ross? Like, if we didn't know he was a heel, would you have known just listening to this as a one-off? Because I wouldn't have.
Like us, like people that have heard years and years worth of Jim Ross, it was noticeable. But no, I agree. To me, this didn't come off him on commentary as much as heel Jim Ross is. This is probably what Jim Ross is like in real life. Like, especially the interactions with Sunny when she was out there.
Do you think Jim Ross is the dish in real life?
I feel like Jim Ross constantly, because if you ever listen to his new podcast with Conrad Thompson, he has a lot of not smart Mark, just smart Alec comments. He's just very sarcastic person.
I mean, that's hard for me to like think about. It's like saying, your granddad's a bit of a dick in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've grown up with Jim Ross, and it's like, could he really be like that? I mean, I don't know what it's like on AEW commentary because I've still not watched any, but I don't know. I find it's like saying Santa Claus is a bit of a moron. It's like this idol you've grown up with all your life. It's like, how can he be? Don't shatter my dreams, Travis.
I always kind of viewed Gorilla Monsoon as like my wrestling granddad, and that's one guy you never hear a bad word about ever.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I feel like for what it was, I mean, we all know what Vince McMahon was like as an announcer. These three right here, they did like they pretty much always did together. It was no more, no less. It was more the same, and I was okay with it. They got into a little theme, I guess, over the years with Survivor Series, where the tag teams would have a Survivor Series elimination match, and they did it for like another year or two after this, but this was another case. I don't remember one kicking off the show, but this one did. It was. And by the way, I can never remember a show, Matt, that had more debuts on it than this one.
Quite a few debuts, wasn't there? I mean, in this match alone, we had Doug Furnace and Phil LaFon, who were teaming with the Godwins against the Bulldog Owen and the New Rockers. I know it was Furnace and LaFon's debut. I'm not sure about the New Rockers. They've been around for a few weeks at least, haven't they?
Mm-hmm. A couple months, I think.
See, I choose Travis to forget the New Rockers, because to me that was just like, you might as well take a big steaming shit on the legacy of the old Rockers. It was like when they did the new Midnight Express with Bob Holly and
Bart Gunn.
Oh, the fuck was it? Bart Gunn, yeah.
Bodacious Bob and Bombastic Bart, or some flip that, one of the two.
Bombastic.
Anytime they did this, even with LOD 2000, after like the first week, it was like, ugh. I always hated new anything.
Yeah.
New Blackjacks.
Yeah. There was over this period into '98, over like a 2-year period, there were so many new teams, like the new Blackjacks, the new Rockers, the new Midnight Express, like so fucking lacking in creative.
Yeah, you get to a point where you're like, how about actually new, something new? Ugh.
I'm surprised when Phineas and Henry turned heel, they weren't just the new Godwins.
Yeah. This match, obviously the debut was Furnace and LaFon, or LaThong, as Jerry Lawler liked to call him all the time, ad nauseum. I come at me, I get it, he's a heel commentator, but I feel like Jerry Lawler's a big another factor in why this team never got over. He always buried the shit out of these guys, more so than other guys, it felt like sometimes.
Yeah. If anyone on commentary, you just said Jerry Lawler was the dead kid.
Yeah. Had this been 1990 through 93, I feel like Furnace and LaFon would have been a much bigger deal than ultimately they were a wet fart in the WWF, which is a shame because, my God, they were talented. But also, I feel like in the wrong company. These guys were tailor-made for an ECW, which they did make shots in, and WCW. It was never an aesthetic thing with these guys. I mean, just open your eyes and look at them, for Christ's sakes. These are obviously signings that Jim Ross or Jim Cornette recommended, in my opinion, in '96. These weren't Vince guys by any stretch. Maybe Furnace. Maybe.
Because Jim Cornette had worked with Doug Furnace, hadn't he? Smoky Mountain.
For years. He was one of the most decorated athletes out of wherever, I think Louisville, or wherever Smoky Mountain was based out of. He was a huge deal down there and one of the top guys for years.
So you can see Jim Cornette going to Vince McMahon and saying, look, partner these two guys together and you can remold a tag team division around them. McMahon just looking at them and going, we'll sign them, but do anything on commentary because we don't really want them to get over.
I'll give them a try, pal. Yeah. They didn't have a gimmick. And by the end of their run, God, they were going by spring of '97, right? No, they lasted around for a good year. Yeah, what am I thinking? But I was going to say they were heels by the end of this, just because the Machine put nothing behind them. If they did, it was for maybe a month against Owen and Bulldog, and they always lost. They never won the belts. Just no effort put into Furnace and LaFon. On the other hand, in my opinion, Matt, one of the most underrated tag teams of all time as a tag team, it was a case that they probably should have never been a tag team, was Owen and the Bulldog. Tremendous chemistry together. Holy shit.
Oh, thank God you said that. I thought you were going to say the Godwins for a minute then.
Well, I didn't hate the heel Godwins, but we'll get there.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, Bulldog and Owen, great tag team. And it was almost like accident, these two just come together and it was like, look at I know they obviously can have chemistry and stuff because brother-in-laws and family ties, etc. But yeah, I mean, I would put them in top 10 tag team WWF tag teams of all time.
Maybe, definitely 20 for me. Do you think this time too? I mean, I do want to say this real quick. It's glaring, and Marty Jannetty suffers a knee injury somehow, and you can pretty much tell he opens the match and he gets a couple spots in. I got to say it. I call it like I see it. Marty looked smacked off of his tits in this match. Maybe that led to the injury. It is an 8-man elimination match, like I was saying, and sometimes, just like Battle Royals, we talked about Jake the Snake Roberts on our last retro review. Sometimes these guys with their demons, they go out there and they see this as just a way to phone it in, kind of. But no, Marty, he was definitely hobbling around. I saw him talking to like Clarence Mason, the referee on the outside, and just I think he came in a little bit after this. Might have been an audible call, and he took like a slop drop, and you could tell even when he took the slop drop, he kind of held his leg in the air. And I don't know if Henry Godwin. This just goes to show how many times I've seen this show, by the way, of these. I don't know if Henry Godwin was pissed because Marty wasn't in the right state of mind, but when he hooked him, it looked like he intentionally hooked the bad leg that was hurt, and you could just kind of hear and see Marty just like when he did it. And just like after he got the pin, Henry Godwin kind of just brushed him off like a piece of shit out of the ring. He just looked really irritated and pissed off at Marty. I don't know if you caught that.
I didn't catch that bit, but I was going to pick up Marty Jannetty and say that he was one of the biggest like tragedies of this match, because not only did he hurt his leg during the bout, but just coming down the aisle and getting in like Marty Jannetty in '96. Somehow, and I watched 95 Survivor Series not too long before I watched this, because I was on the Survivor Series train.
Yeah.
And he looked so much worse in '96 than he did in '95.
Yeah.
So he didn't look great in '95, don't get me wrong, but in '96, and it's just like, how did you just deteriorate so much in such little time?
He was also doing like weird heelish taunts, which maybe made me think he was drunk. Like he did this weird little dance, and I think Jim Ross mentioned on commentary, like Marty needs to stop focusing on being a geek and get down to business or something. It was just bad and really depressing, like you said. I will say the other half of the New Rockers, Al Snow, he did what he could to make up for it, because there was a tremendous spot. It was like an inverted superplex, which was great. I think from LaFon. Yeah. And he got the pin with that, but the crowd popped huge for that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to be down on Al Snow because he was put in an enviable position. Like, you put in a rebranded tag team that was popular in the early 90s, and it's never going to be popular in the mid 90s, even as a heel tag team, because one of the original members is gone. The other original member is just worn down so much that he looks, smashed out of his head every time he goes out there. Not what he was anymore. And it's like, what do you do if you're Al Snow? Try and make the best of it, of course, but at the same time, it's like, just hang in there and wait for something better to come along, which it would.
Yeah, most definitely. And I feel like after this, Marty he was gone probably a month after this, right?
Yeah, I think so. He was definitely going on by the 97 Rumble.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe this match was a cause of that. Who knows?
I mean, if it was a leg injury, then it was probably the injury that took him out, and then obviously Vince looked at him and went, "Yeah, you don't belong here in '97, mate."
Yeah. I mean, the rest of this match, you can tell Furnace and LaFon had some nerves. Furnace was known for his amazing dropkick, which was nice, but he went for the first one here and he totally missed by a mile. There was a little miscommunication with him and Davey Boy Smith and a little crisscross ropes thing or something, and it was his first chance to ever show why. That was like literally the first spot of the match for anyone in Furnace and LaFon to show their shit, and they messed it up, and it was just, is it an omen?
I mean, it probably was. I'd like to say it was nerves on their part, because I'm sure they probably never performed in front of such a large audience before. I mean, LaFon maybe. Haven't he had like deals in Japan and matches there? So maybe LaFon, dealt with it better than Furnace. But I seem to remember, didn't Furnace clash heads with Owen or Davey at one point?
Yeah, and he did go for another drop kick, and he nailed it to perfection that time. But that time, the crowd had already seen the first attempt, and they didn't care. Yeah. It came down to Furnace and LaFon versus the champs, Owen and Bulldog. And I remember watching this as a kid, and even at the time, they did it with The Rock later on in the show. It was kind of obvious what route they were going. You very rarely saw a babyface debut back then like that and lose their debut, ever.
I'll be honest, Travis. I'm losing you. I didn't hear a large portion of that.
I was going to say the finish of this match came down to the champs, Owen and the Bulldog, and Furnace and LaFon. And I said, even as a kid back then, it was kind of predictable because for years in WWF, when a babyface debuted like that, they very rarely, if ever, lost a match.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously, this was leading to, them trying to challenge Owen and Davey for the tag team titles. So, I mean, in the end, it was the right call. Just in the hope of getting them over, but ultimately doomed to fail.
All for naught. And that's the way they kicked off. There's worse ways to kick off a Survivor Series, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, at least it was a traditional Survivor Series match. In years to come, we wouldn't even get traditional Survivor Series matches on the show, let alone kicking it off. So
yeah. Where did that take us next, man?
That took us to The Undertaker versus Mankind.
That's not The Undertaker, that's Batman. What are you talking about?
Matt Taker. The entrance was the best part of this for me. The Undertaker coming down from the rafters like Batman, and it looked cool, it looked really, really good, and it left an impression. Do you know what? So much of an impression. I attended my first ever wrestling event. Must have been 2 weeks after this in Birmingham. They were on the European tour, and that entrance stuck with me so much that when The Undertaker, it was time for his match, I looked to the rafters to see if he was coming from there.
Very nice, a little Matt fun fact.
As a 10-year-old kid, my mum was like, oh my God, is he here somewhere? Is he up in the ceiling?
And I hate to say it, as much as...
House show, of course not.
As much as little you love the entrance, can we say what they were totally ripping off from the other company? Come on.
Yes.
Yeah. I got to tell you, though, people come at me in the comments, it looks so much cooler with Undertaker because he was taller and he had bat wings. You can't fuck with bat wings at all. You can't mess with it.
No.
This was also the debut of Big Leather Undertaker. And the way he had his hair in this, he wouldn't keep this for a couple years, but he looked like Ministry of Darkness Taker just in this match.
Yeah. Looking back, it's like a nice slow transition from late 96 into Ministry Undertaker, but I mean, the gimp leather outfit just didn't really go, did it? Under gimp wasn't working for me.
The whole gimmick behind this match was Paul Bearer has been such a thorn in the side of the dead man for months after turning on him at SummerSlam to join Mankind, and this was the blow off for the Undertaker-Mankind feud for the most part until they'd pick it up again 2 years later. He'd be hanging in a cage above the ring, and just that sight, that was for me the best part of the match was Paul Bearer, just focusing on him and how he would react. Other than that, not much of a match. It was just a punch kick fest, a little couple Irish whips into the steel barricade, and and it was weird. What it followed a month before, these two guys, literally the stipulation was to bury a human being alive, and this a month later, it was so lackluster in comparison.
And you know what? I think what killed it for me, I just probably believed everything that followed in the match if they'd have started off with an all-out brawl. But The Undertaker started off with submission moves. It's like this guy just got 5 members of the roster together to bury you alive, and you're beginning the match with submission moves. Take out a chair and smash him over the head with it.
This was a weird time for his character in the fall of '96 because after the SummerSlam match with Mankind, whenever he came back, he had a little feud with Goldust. They always booked him they always said a million times on commentary too, he was a more aggressive Undertaker. And he did show that in those matches with Goldust. He showed a more aggressive, faster paced style. But in this match, he did the complete fucking opposite. He's out there working like Billy goddamn Robinson.
Yeah.
Who is this? Speaking of Taker, real quick, I know it's nothing to do with this, just because you're such a huge fan and I know people kind of want to hear your opinion. Did you catch the shoot with Steve Austin last week?
I did. I watched it. I finished watching it the night before last.
I absolutely fucking loved it. And I even put out a tweet while I was watching, man, this is tremendous. And this is I feel like I need to pay tuition to a wrestling school to hear some of this advice. It was great.
Yeah, it was you know what? And it was refreshing to see him sit down out of character and not worry about, breaking kayfabe or whatever. It was just like him and Austin. Let's have a drink at a bar and shoot over old times.
Was it weird for you, like me, like while you're watching it, it seemed like someone dubbed over Undertaker? Like that doesn't seem like his real voice should sound like that.
Yeah, it was weird. It was like, oh my god, is that you? Is it really you?
It's like this faint little old country singer voice or something.
It's nice to say that after all these years, though. It's like, do you know what? To hear him say like, I should have hung it up at WrestleMania 33 against Roman Reigns, and like I thought that was going to be the end.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's nice to hear that admission from him, because people generally think of the Undertaker as like, do you want to wrestle this year for this amount of millions? And it's like, yeah, I'll take that money. But for him to actually sit down and say, do you know what? I should have not come back after 33. Like, oh, that's like a breath of fresh air.
But that was also the only cringe part of the interview. A little bit after that, he'd be like, well, I did come back, and the price was right. And I was like, oh, shut up. Don't ruin it. But yeah, it's a must-see. Guys, go out of your way to catch that, if anything. It was really good. Matt recommends it, and he's the biggest Undertaker fan in the world. He does not recommend this match, though, and neither do I. Like we said, boring as shit. Your finish was Taker getting the win. No heat behind this match for me with the crowd, except for the very finish when it seemed like, and this was a cool little visual too, that's Cage slowly being lowered down, Paul Bearer freaking the hell out. But alas, another debut about you. Everyone talks about The Rock and all these amazing debuts in this pay-per-view. Maybe the biggest one of all that never gets mentioned, Matt, was
the Executioner,
who comes from a street somewhere, and it was a pretty bad street from what I hear.
I like what you did there. Very good.
You got okay. You sign a Terry Gordy, by the way, guys. You sign this guy, and I get it. This is after his overdose or accident, whatever it was. He was never himself, but this is all you got for for a group that coined entrance music in wrestling. This is all you fucking got for Terry Gordy.
Yeah, terrible, wasn't it? Like, put him under the cheesiest fucking pantomime costume you can find. Cover his face up so no one can see him. And then not only that, but as he runs out, I think, was it Jim Ross or Vince McMahon, one of them, screamed his name like we should know who he was.
Just like on AEW,
Like,
last week's AEW. I don't know if you saw the clip of that awful fucking debut of that group, the Butcher, the Bunny, and the Blade, but Excalibur on commentary is talking about him like, we should know who the fuck this is.
I saw pictures. I didn't see the clip.
I don't like it. As of now, I don't like it. They need to do something else with it. I don't know. But yeah, and Executioner obviously interrupting it. I will say, at first I thought Playboy Buddy Rose aged tremendously and got himself in great shape because we hadn't seen the Executioner since WrestleMania 1 in the very first match. He looked great.
Oh my god. Oh, move on.
Box of gimmicks. Boom. That was that. Let's move the fucking train along, please.
It's late.
Was this Steve Austin's promo or was that after this?
That was after the actual next match. We had a promo with Doc Hendricks interviewing Triple H, Goldust, Lawler, and
this team.
The only thing that stuck with me from this promo, what was Triple H doing with his accent in November '96? I didn't know whether he was Jamaican or trying to be English with a hint of American in it.
It's hard to decide what accent to use when you're too busy eye-raping Marlena.
Yeah, true.
This was...
if I had Marlena stood in front of me, I'd probably be Jamaican as well for about 20 seconds.
Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know what we're talking about, this was the promo with Team Triple H before their match coming up. Jerry Lawler, the felon crush, fresh out of jail. Goldust with Marlena and, Triple H. This was planting the seeds for Goldust's babyface. I think this promo right here planted the very first seed, like I just said jokingly about eye-raping Marlena. During this whole promo, you could see this sexual tension, him and Marlena checking each other out, and that would lead to the jealousy angle, him wanting to make her one of his valets. He'd always have a different girl at the time to escort in the ring, and of course pissing off Goldust, and boom, you're a babyface, Goldust. Also, this was like a week after Kurt Hennig left the company, and there was a match billed with Mark Merrow and Triple H to crown the new vacant IC champ after Ahmed Johnson had to relinquish it due to injury. Mr. Perfect was supposed to be in the corner of Mark Merrow, turned on Triple H, and we thought it was going to be his new protege, Mr. Perfect. No, but he'd leave for WCW, wiping the slate clean, fucking up the whole storyline, and Triple H didn't come out with a girl, he didn't come out with anybody, he came out with nobody for the entrance. Before any of the other teams come out, I do want to say, I know you want me. I hate that fucking song. Sunny's song. I think this was the debut. She was on commentary for this match, Matt.
Yeah, she was. But I will say about Sonny, Travis, when you're a 10-year-old boy and you've got Sonny on your screen, it's like, oh, you're everything I ever want in a woman.
Right. But when you're a 35-year-old man and you got to go back and analyze and review this shit for dedicated listeners and maybe one of the worst color commentators I've ever heard in my fucking life. Awful.
Do you know what? She was such a trash bag as well, wasn't she?
Ugh.
Now we know things about her that we didn't know when we were kids. It's like, what a trashy classes whore she really was.
Thought actually stands for Tammy has only teased it. She's the queen. She started it all. She's the queen of sleaze in the WWF. She's. I was never like, yeah, I got it when I was younger and stuff, but I was always more Marlena than Sable than anybody. That was always my go-to, especially when she morphed into Terry, the little she-devil.
I mean, for me, it was still Sunny, but I mean, you like who you like, don't you?
Either way, this put her out there with Jim Ross and Vince McMahon, by the way, did a little dance with Sunny before she sat down and put on the headset. It may be one of the most cringe Vince moments ever. And you could see Jim Ross, he even audibly was like making fun of Vince. Like, oh, what are you doing? Jesus Christ. Just blah, blah, blah. It's awful. Awful. I do remember Sunny also calling Jim Ross chubby and it being a little uncomfortable for a second. Either way.
Didn't he ask Sunny if she smokes?
Oh, yeah, he's like, it's a filthy, disgusting habit. I'm as innocent as I look. And he's like, well.
Yeah, she doesn't smoke. She only does crack cocaine off of Chris Candido's abs.
Ooh. Ooh. This was also, I think, peak Sunny. This was when she was the most downloaded in America Online, having an affair with Shawn Michaels in Jamaica. This was all that. This whole period right now was her, just the biggest she ever got in her career was this. And you could tell she was full of herself. It all went to her head completely.
Yeah, she thought she was the Hulk's ball.
And it's even better when all these stories come out years later and you hear how much disdain her and Sable had for each other. And for the babyface team, who consisted of Mark Marrow, the Stalker Barry Windham, their debut of some fucking guy I never heard of before, Matt, by the way.
Yeah, whatever happened to him? I mean, come on.
I don't know, maybe he opened up a wrestling school somewhere.
Yeah, maybe he tried down to acting and never heard of him again.
Rocky, Maivia, and Vacant were your babyface team coming out. Not Vacant for long. But during the entrance, when Mark Marrow came out, you could just hear the venom from Sunny towards Sable about her implants and all that. Because Jim Ross is like, no, I think that's the most beautiful woman in the world. And you could just hear Sunny just hate that fucking comment. And she just ate up Sable on commentary. It was great.
Even though you couldn't see him, you could feel her eyes burning into his soul.
And also, by the way, I feel like for me, I don't know about you, Sable looked like a complete mannequin. She did not look like a real human being in this match. I don't know why. Something about the lighting or the makeup, she just looked completely plastic more than ever for me.
I mean, you've obviously taken a lot more interest in Sable than I did, Travis. So.
Well, as a match, we don't got a whole hell of a lot to work with because Mark Marrow gets on and cuts a terrible promo about getting wild with you in New York City, which was so fucking bad it hurt. My God, it hurt the fans' feelings it was such a bad line. But no, Jake the Snake Roberts, who replaced the injured Mark Henry, looking in peak physical condition more than ever, Matt.
Do you know what? I've got down here, like, biggest mistake of the match was Roberts goes topless. Like, dear God.
Jake, you were supposed to keep that fancy green vest on. That's why they made it for you in 96. You're doing the opposite. You could even hear Jim Ross on commentary go, well, Jake obviously not spending too much time at the beach. Awful. But yet, I feel like for this little hype promo from Mark Marrow, when Mark Marrow announced who the partner was going to be, he said, let's get wild for Jake the Snake Roberts. And it felt like it trailed on for an eternity. And it was like the most mid-level, lackluster, mediocre pop ever from the crowd. It was just bad.
And out walks this fat old alcoholic who's just now completely doing it for the money. dad on holiday at the beach, just come plodding out the hotel because there's nothing else for him to do that day. His fat guts hanging over his waist, his man boobs just swaying there. And it's just like, done.
Couldn't even have been bothered to put the snake in the fucking bag for this. Just came out with the snake and threw it in the ring. And all the heels scrambled like roaches when the light comes on. And before the match even started, Jake picked up his snake. He went to high-five Barry Windham, and he stumbled into the corner. That already tells you the mindset that Mr. Roberts is in for this match. And it wasn't much of a match on his part. To be honest, this was pretty basic wrestling school. This whole match was just... It's just one vehicle to get one person over who was brand new. Nobody else really benefited from this at all. Even the brand new Intercontinental Champion, Triple H, nobody really came out of this any better than they went in besides one guy. And this, besides being on a bunch of Rocky Maivia compilation DVDs and just the history aspect of this being his debut in the most awful goddamn attire since Jeff Jarrett in 94, that's all this was. It came down to him and a handicap against Crush and Goldust. And again, just like with Furnace and Lathong earlier, you knew where this was going.
Yeah. I mean, it was the right way to build the star that would be The Rock. Obviously not that he'd thrive off this victory much going forward, but I mean, like you said, it was a vehicle for one man, and that's the best thing you can say about this match. Roberts looked terrible. Barry Windham didn't look much better.
He looked coherent, but he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else.
Yeah. Jerry Lawler did, I thought, a fine job of hamming it up and, you know what I mean, playing up the heel side of it. But when you've got Crush and a fat old Jake Roberts and the pasty Barry Windham, and let's be honest, a Dustin Rhodes who wasn't moving his finest at the end of 96.
I feel like because of that promo where we talked about them planting the seeds of his first ever babyface run, I feel like that also shackled him. Like they were telling him to reel back on the androgynous stuff. So he was kind of just out there with nothing to do.
Yeah. It looked like, apart from Rocky Maivia, and Mark Moreau did a bit. Like, apart from The Rock, I think Mark Moreau did the most here. It just looked like a load of men, who decided to go to work for 23 minutes. 23 minutes this went, Travis.
Oh, I'm aware.
And it felt every bit of it, didn't it? So I could get it over with.
I do want to mention before we totally gloss over it, and I kick myself listening to the playback of this, can someone explain to Mark Merrow what suffices for proper hair length to put it in a ponytail?
Why does that bother you so much?
They're just, ugh. It does. It shouldn't. I just want to snip it. When you do that, when your hair's not long enough to put in a ponytail and anybody does that, it just makes me want to get scissors and boom, you don't have long hair anymore. In 2 seconds. It's up there with the man bun.
You know, I never thought this podcast would come to you and me talking about men's hairstyles, but that's where we've got to in 29.
And beefcake is nowhere to be found in this fucking card. Before we move on, I think it's on that note, I think it's time for a little break, Matt. Before we get to one of my favorite matches of all time. Fair? When we come back, Brett and Austin, for the first time ever, well, kinda, coming up, the rest of Survivor Series 96, when Matt, hopefully I didn't completely make him broken, Matt. He'll be all right by the time we come back. More hair tips coming up, guys, right here, Union Smack. Stick around.
I'm the Bruiserweight Pete Dunne, and you're listening to the Union Smack podcast.
It is with tremendous honor that we here from Union Smack induct our picks as the greatest legends in the history of British and European wrestling, right here on the Union Smack Hall of Fame, put together by my co-host, the Maniac, Matt Tennant. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for the first batch of inductees right here on the Union Smack podcast.
We are back right here, Union Smack Retro Review Survivor Series 96. Let's get serious. Let's get down to action right here, because business definitely is about to pick up, Matt. What's coming up next?
Coming up next is Bret Hart versus Steve Austin, but not before some very nice video packages to highlight the match and hype it, and an Austin interview, which is very, very good indeed.
Damn good. And it just drives home the fact that Todd Pettengill was such a dork, too.
Yeah, true.
Just how Todd Pettengill cuts a backstage promo with Steve Austin before he goes out and says, by the end of it, you're about to go out there and face Bret Hart. And Steve Austin immediately fires back with like, you build him up like I'm supposed to give a shit. It was just great. And then he told him like, sit there and not even say a word, and just cut the promo of his life for the biggest match of his life to this date. Before we went to break, I made a comment, not really their first match. For anyone that wondered what I mean by that, they actually had a match that aired from the Kuwaiti Cup tournament earlier in the year. Bret made a couple shots. He wasn't completely gone from the company since WrestleMania 12, even though they billed this as his return since. It was fine. It was nothing like this in WrestleMania 13, but I feel like that was the very first time these guys ever really worked. And for what it was all right.
Yeah, I mean, it was a tryout for what they could do at Survivor Series. That's how I'd look at it.
Mm-hmm. What can we say that hasn't already been said about just this birth of Austin 316, this initial build-up this year for him, the Pillman and a gun angle, just running roughshod, and just you could see it even in 96. You could feel it shifting. Just everything was riding on the shoulders of one guy, and literally one guy grabbed the throat of this company, as people love to say, and said, let's go, and everything changed.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much else you can say, but I think it's probably covered in every podcast, every WWE DVD release about Austin, every book. You know, I don't think there's anything else to say apart from he was the right bloke in the right moment, you know, in the right time. And can you imagine if it had been anyone else in 96 winning King of the Ring, if it had been Helmsley?
Yeah.
If the curtain call hadn't happened and he hadn't received the punishment, you know, and they hadn't had to find a replacement for him, it's just like history could have been so different.
Yeah.
If Austin hadn't have, you know, come along and said, you know what, this company needs a fucking good kick up the arse.
It's not a stretch to think if Helmsley wouldn't have been punished and Austin didn't get it, that the WWE wouldn't even exist today.
It's weird, isn't it, to think that the future of one company and the entirety of history could have been different. Just one tiny moment hadn't have happened.
Here's a huge fun fact, excuse me. This was the very first time Steve Austin used the iconic music. Before this, it was that shitty Ringmaster music he was still using with this Attitude character. But this theme was actually what they would use in the vignettes of his for weeks building up to this.
And it was the right call, because those vignettes made him seem like a even more badass than he already was.
And it's so simple, but it worked like a charm. Just that glass shattering effect said so much without saying a word, and it just got every crowd ready for what was. It just that one little effect put him on a whole other level. Like, all right, now it's serious. You heard the glass, you know. It really was a beautiful thing to see a pop in wrestling when that glass hit. For anyone that didn't experience it live at the time, it was amazing. You can't, you know.
It was almost a beckoning of like a superhero, wasn't it? Like the first few chords of Hogan's Real American theme. It was just like glass shattering. Here he comes, like here comes Superman to save the day.
This was also the first time I feel like they acknowledged on commentary that the crowd was getting behind Austin too.
Yeah, well, you couldn't not. This is like in a few weeks and months, and especially leading into WrestleMania 13, it was like there was little point ignoring it, you know?
You could see how it was baby steps with that too, because by the time, and I got it, it was Bret's return back to TV, but in comparison, Bret got a much more thunderous reaction. You know what I mean? Yeah. But just give it time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, people often say it's like, who's the greatest, you know, draw in wrestling history? Was it Hogan? Was it Austin? Cena? take or whatever, but I mean, I know a lot of people will say Hogan, but for me, it's like WWF would have survived in the early 90s without Hogan. Or it'd have been much different, but yeah, they'd have survived. I'm not sure WWF 96 onwards would have survived without Austin, and for me, that probably makes him the biggest draw in WWF history.
Even with Austin doing the same character till about the spring of 97, they were at the lowest ratings ever. So even with having Austin at this time, wasn't even helping. They had to literally take what one guy was doing and shift everything internally to make the whole package. I feel like when they finally... Is it lame to say when they finally changed the Raw as War set, that's when I feel like that was the biggest right step in the right direction? It just made it stop feeling dated, like we said.
I mean, maybe. But I mean, like, looking like overall of the baby steps they took with Austin in 96, and I mean, I like to believe, even though they were still getting smashed in the ratings, I like to believe they knew change had to happen somewhere, and that they saw like the reaction to Austin and held on to it for all it was worth. And that journey over the next 2/3 years until they finally toppled WCW in the ratings, it was like, yeah, they got smashed in the ratings, so how can you call Austin a ratings draw, etc. But his importance, what I'm trying to say is his importance to the company during them years, for me, would put him above Hogan.
I gotta agree. It just Hogan didn't, totally, because like you said, Hogan didn't save the company. He just put it to bigger and better things. The company would have been fine. Austin was literally a life preserver for Vince McMahon. And the scariest part about this whole thing is, and as weird as it is, because I just literally got done shitting on the guy for an hour or so with Bubba on Hibiki High Spots. If it wasn't for Vince Russo, Vince would have never gone the route of making Steve the top guy anyway. It would have never happened. People don't want to admit that, but he was the one that got Vince to open his fucking eyes finally.
I think there is some good to come out of that whole bag of shit that he's with Drew, so.
Yeah. Give and take, my friend. Let's ask the age-old question. A lot of people say it's not a debate. Good.
He gave Austin and took WCW, so,
Yeah. Do you think this match is better than the Mania 13 match, or do you prefer the Mania 13 match to this?
It's hard because they're two different matches.
Exactly. I was going to say I hate when people ask that question because it's apples and oranges.
I think they're equally as good as each other. Because this isn't all out. I mean, obviously there's a few bits on the outside of the ring where, you could compare it to WrestleMania 13, but apart from that, it's like, this is 24 minutes and 51 seconds of pure like wrestling. Their WrestleMania 13 match was a very, very good, well-constructed, dramatic, hardcore match, basically.
Exactly. It was like a ballet of brutality was that match. Because they did it. They didn't just go out there like the Sandman and Axl Rotten and just hit each other with objects. No, they told a beautifully fucking paced story while doing it,
Exactly. So this was the beginning, like the baby steps of the Austin-Bret Hart rivalry. Nicely told with technical wrestling from beginning to end, And WrestleMania 13 was the switch. It was the big moment. It was everything WWF needed at that time, and it was told as a different story and different dynamics than this. So
yeah. And for what it's worth, both matches are textbook for what they are. This one, everything made sense. Brett worked on parts that, like, if you got a guy in there with a brace on a body part, you should think psychology-wise, well, you got to work on that, and Brett did that. It was slow when it needed to be. It picked up when it needed to be, and the finish made sense. That classic finish Brett's done with like Piper and sleepers and stuff like that. That countering the $1 Million Dream into a pin. It didn't really make Steve Austin come away looking weak, just like with Owen and Brett when Owen got a roll up, because it came out looking like in either way. Either guy could have got the win. It was just a fluke, not a fluke, but just kind of a toss up, And it made you want to see a rematch, which you did.
It was the right ending to protect Austin, because you couldn't have him pinned clean in the middle of the ring so soon after his King of the Ring victory, especially like on the not decline, what's the other one? Ascent. You know, on the ascent, his career was going up, and you know they'd come to blows in the '97 Rumble, and the story would continue. That all of that would have been flat and dead if Bret Hart had just pinned him or submitted him in the middle of the ring.
This might be controversial to say, and people might totally disagree with me, but I feel like by the end of '93, through a lot of '94, except for matches with like 1, 2, 3 Kid, which are great, Bret kind of gotten himself into a pattern of it was always just not as bad as Ric Flair, but every Bret Hart match was pretty much the same. The side setup, backbreaker, the elbow drop from the second rope, and the sharpshooter you knew was coming. I feel like when Steve Austin come along, even more so than Shawn Michaels, he had to make Bret Hart think outside the box more to come up with finishes and how to just tell a story. And I think it was refreshing to Bret. That's why he loved to work with Steve, because he'd become complacent in a way.
Yeah. And do you know what else I felt during this match? Watching it back after all these years, and obviously living through '95 and '96 and the end of '94, etc. I felt that they did such a good job that in a roundabout way they were almost a detriment to the rest of the card and the company, in that you could feel how old and stale WWF was.
Mm-hmm.
Away from this match and around it. It's like they stood out and they shone so much that you then look at the rest of the card and then the rest of the company around them, you know, the Raws and everything else, and you think, that was so good, but the rest of it feels so old and dated.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%. It's a must-see classic match, wrestling at its best, in my opinion, and probably Matt's opinion, too.
Totally agree.
The next match, not so much. Christ's sakes. Yeah, and you just literally got done saying it. Compared to the rest of the card when these guys went out, this was a prime example of that. Oh my God.
Before we get into that, Travis, it's like we had a quite good Sid promo before this.
Yeah. Yeah, we did.
Could that have been Sid's best ever promo? I mean, we've heard him cut some Ultimate Warrior type promos, but I thought this was like, I'll believe he'll beat Shawn Michaels, even if I've not seen this card ever before.
This, or I love the one still, his best promo is probably with Gene Okerlund at WrestleMania 8, where he's just telling how he's just going to end Hulkamania. It was good. And he called Gene Okerlund a fat, bald-headed little oaf.
Yeah.
No, Sid was one of the most believable guys I've ever seen in pro wrestling. He didn't even have to say a word. He just looks like so many people have said before, that he just looks like the epitome of what a wrestler should be.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that. The height, the build, the look. It's just a shame he wasn't better. But we'll get on to Sid in a minute.
It's a shame he loves softball so fucking much.
You've just ruined the image of this tough, vicious Sid.
Well, I mean, it's reality. It's like I'm making it up. You would never think a guy like that loves fucking softball so much.
Have you never heard of kayfabe? Come on.
It's more dead than kayfabe is more dead than half of this babyface Survivor Series. Oh, that was wrong. Yokozuna, Jimmy Snuka, Savio Vega, and the debut of that's Too Cold Scorpio, right? No, it's damn it.
Did you be honest, when you watched this, and obviously you know who Too Cold Scorpio was, did you think, what the fuck have they done to him?
Even as a kid, I thought his outfit was awful. Just awful. Not even the make that it was a one-body singlet, but the colors, the design was just bad. Yeah. Just puke. Holy shit. But Jim Ross made that great line, I've never seen the red and yellow look so good in the garden. So there's that.
I feel like I've had something Too Cold Scorpio, like a solid intercontinental guy, if they hadn't have saddled him with Flash Funk.
I agree. I totally agree.
Scorpio was so good in ECW before this. It's like,
as a heel too.
Yeah.
And by the time they finally did call him Too Cold Scorpio in like '98 and put him with Terry Funk, nobody cared because the damage had already been done.
Oh yeah, I mean this character will kill anything you've got going for you in the future.
This character will kill anybody's good day they're
albatross
having to go back and see the squander potential they did here.
Yeah, that is true, actually.
The debuts don't stop rolling, though. Also, the debut. He had been in the company for a while, but this was the official. Just here it is. I just got done talking about it too. The Nation of Domination. The first time ever. He was the gladiator Farouk with the blue helmet for no reason for months before this, and one of the best repackages ever, in my opinion. Come at me.
I mean, I wouldn't say one of the best, but he certainly needed it. He looked more legitimate. He looked more like the Ron Simmons of WCW, like Doom Ron Simmons.
I just say that because it was more reality based and believable and not just hokey and fucking terrible and kiddie, I guess. And it didn't help the man has a voice like a goddamn demon, and he's one of the most underrated heel promos of all time, and he just terrifies me.
Yeah. He looked so much better than he did as Gladiator Farouk. Farouk Assad, we should say.
Now, on paper, people are probably looking at Farouk's team that don't know any better, and they're going, holy shit, it's stacked. My God, Razor and Diesel and Vader, that's one of the best teams ever. No, I hate to burst bubbles, Matt.
Yeah, this was fake Razor and fake Diesel and almost washed up Vader.
And fake Vader, pretty much. Oh boy, this, and by the way, another vacant surprise debut. Jimmy Snuka announces the surprise guy, which I don't even know.
Look, again, it's like so rough. Like, where are you dragging these old men out from? And why in the end of '96? You know, you're coming into '97. A new era is about to be born. Why are you booking men who had their heyday in '85?
And guys that can barely walk because of their weight problems. And this was Yokozuna's last ever match in the WWF.
Yeah. Didn't they send him home and pay him for 2 years to get fat?
Something like that. He always snuck out and like there's stories of him going and getting in McDonald's during where they put him in weight rehab for Christ's sakes, and he got kicked out for sneaking out, I heard. Yeah.
I mean, it's tragic, like, when you look how it ended for him.
Really is. I don't want to make light of it because Yokozuna is one of the greatest big men ever. In his prime, he was so agile. He did stuff he never should have done, but he did.
Agreed. It's just like if he could have controlled that weight habit. You know, and it was, what a shame.
Here's a question that people don't ask enough, Matt. Had he kept it together and been just 93 Yokozuna till today, what kind of part you think he would have played in the Monday Night War? Or you think they would have made him kind of like a Mark Henry, like a comedy type thing?
I mean, it's possible because it was the Attitude Era, and look what we got in the Attitude Era, even with men like the Undertaker.
Right. Yeah.
You know, the Ministry of Darkness probably wasn't even meant to be a comedy spoof, but in the end, it just turned into something laughable. I personally, had I been booking it, I would have, tried to help him maintain his weight, and then just booked him as this killer fucking heel from '93 onwards, because it'd have been believable. You know, had he had a Bruno Sammartino reign as champion, who's going to get it off of him? Look at the size of him, and then look at the size of the rest of your roster.
But Matt, Terry must pose. WrestleMania 9. We got to get Terry to pose. The fans aren't going to be happy if they don't leave and Terry doesn't pose.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
I kind of feel like they would have made him a backdrop member of the corporation as just like muscle or something.
But you could have done you could have built him over. I mean, this is like fantasy booking, and it would have never happened. And people will go, but you'd have missed out on champions like Brett and Shawn, and fucking Sid and Austin eventually, you know. But if you'd have booked him from '93, he'd have won the title. When he won the title, he'd have gone into '94 as champion. It's hard to see how this guy couldn't have been still an unbeatable ultra heel coming into '97, still champion after 3 years, nearly 4, and it's like, who's going to take him down? No one can. Vader can't beat him. Undertaker can't beat him. And then up comes Austin.
Until Brock Lesnar in modern times, Vince, I feel like has never, or Triple H, excuse me, the Reign of Terror, has never been a big fan of heels being dominant as champion for too long. Those are the only real 2 guys I can think of that he let have dominant heel reigns, if you think about it.
Yeah. But you're not telling me Yokozuna wouldn't have drawn at least some money or interest as a champion, a 4-year champion, and then you built the mystique around who is going to take him down.
I do, and I feel like it would have been cool, but then I think about things we might have not gotten, like Austin, stuff like that. I'm like, could it have messed everything up with how everything turned out? Who knows? But it would have been interesting either way.
I don't think it would, because then you could have built Austin on a different path, like Austin going through Hart, going through Michaels, going through Undertaker in '97 en route to dethroning Yokozuna. Like, Austin's beat all these men that Yokozuna has, and now these 2 men are on par with each other.
Very true.
The babyface who won't give up, the heel who won't go down.
Maybe then they wouldn't have had to take an ultra risk by using Dude Love as their first top guy to go against Austin. I mean, it worked, but it was a hell of a risk to take at the time.
It really was.
Jesus Christ. Dare I say, too, that maybe Mankind might not even have been needed. It could have been Yoko and Undertaker in those Hell in the Cell. He's not going to throw off Yoko. I mean, Jesus Christ, but still. Also, I feel like a guy, Rikishi, his career could have benefited a lot more, too, because then you could use storylines of the Samoan Dynasty. And if Yokozuna had been dominant and heel for that long, that would align him in some kind of feud or stable with him,
Yeah.
Who knows? What a great fantasy question that was unintentionally. Yeah.
Yeah, we should do a whole episode on just like fantasy booking the '90s again.
What ifs? What if this match was good? Who knows?
Well, it wasn't. So bubble.
Really, all this was another thing with The Rock. They weren't putting as much cards in the Scorpio camp as The Rock, but this was really just Scorpio holding the glue together in this match, getting that awesome moonsault Acai to the out, not Acai, just off the turnbuckle to the outside on Vader. My God.
Yeah. He was the best part of this.
He was the strongest he ever looked in any match ever. Was Flash Funk in this? He was out there.
Who else was sad? Vader was sad.
He was.
He fell so far in such a short amount of time. But he went from WWF Championship match in August to this farce in November.
Yeah.
And then not only that, but he had to sell for a Jimmy Snooker, who by rights should have probably been on crutches.
I mean, yeah, he couldn't bend his knees the full way since like '87, so it's really bad.
Laughable, and sad at the same time.
And that was that, Matt.
And we sit through this, and what do we get in the end? A massive disqualification.
You get a big fuck finish. Because it seemed like this match was going to go 40 minutes. So I'm kind of thankful, because nobody had really been eliminated.
Can you imagine if this had been the longest match on the card?
Oh.
If this had been the Survivor Series 88 tag team match all over again, but with this bunch of guys.
To be honest, I don't think half the guys in this match could have done that without EMTs having to come out. Not to be a total dick, but Christ. Main event time. It's definitely the second best match of the night. I love it. I love this match, not for the in-ring by any means, just for the outcome, the spectacle, the crowd. My God, the crowd were the biggest stars of this match. WWF title match, Psycho Sid, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels had a hell of a run throughout '96. But like with Steve Austin, you could tell the winds of change were starting to blow. This is the first time I ever remember a crowd shitting on Shawn, John Cena style like this.
Do you think, because to my memory, I thought they started booing him like around Mind Games. I thought they'd like really started to get on him around that time, because I don't remember him getting a favourable reaction at SummerSlam against Vader. I
do. Maybe I'd have to go back. I haven't seen that one in a while. I remember him getting pretty hero's welcome.
See, we've got two different memories now. Like, I'm sure that like the crowd had started to turn like long before this.
Well, it only took an hour this week, Matt, but we disagreed for the first time.
It's a record.
The gist and the crutch of this match was based off a 70-year-old man, by the way, or 60, however old he was. Jose Lothario, who was Shawn's, quote, mentor at ringside, who, due to all accounts from what I heard, Shawn Michaels treated him like shit backstage and never wanted him out there. This was a Vince call to make him his mentor. Shawn hated this.
Well, he can hate it all he liked, but it did provide one of the most memorable endings of 1996 to a match, and it also made Shawn look less weak than he probably would have done losing clean, so I don't know what the fuck he's complaining about.
I mean, the match, for what it was like... It
wasn't great, was it?
It was pretty much Sid beating the shit out of Shawn the whole match.
Yeah. I will say for Shawn, as arrogant and as prickish as he was in 96, like, he threw himself around that ring to make Sid look good.
He did. He was a bumping machine for Sid. He did. He made Sid look valid. If you had never seen a Sid match before and you watched this match, you'd be like, Sid's a pretty good worker.
Yeah, you'd be like, what a fucking beast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what a beast of a man.
But Jesus.
Yeah, all credit to Shawn Michaels for doing that.
All credit to Shawn, but Jesus Christ, all credit to this crowd, because everything Shawn tried to do offensively, besides like a smattering of like 30 schoolgirls, just boos, deafening boos. Not even, they couldn't even ignore it on commentary. And this was the time, 96, you stick to the script, pal, But they couldn't. I think Vince even made a quote. And when Vince makes a quote, it's loud and audible. And this crowd wanted a Sid title reign. Sid had never been the world champion. As a kid, I was completely fucking shocked because I thought they were just going to build Shawn and get the Brett rematch at Mania. And I didn't feel like Sid was the guy they were going to put a world title on ever. But they did. That place exploded after a little bit of funny business on the outside. Sid took a camera, ref bump, something like that. Sid took a cameraman, took his camera, and hit Jose Lothario in the chest, who, by the way, great selling. I remember Jose going, "Ah!" like at the top of his lungs. Ah! But and it just he wasn't getting up, and they played the angle, the classic Fritz von Erich world-class heart attack angle, where EMT's kayfabe came down to check on him. Shawn was out there after this, the character, and Shawn, by the way, Shawn nailed this to a T. Credit to all guys, Jose, Sid, everyone involved. They did a really good job of making you wonder for a little bit, and Shawn, you could tell he didn't care about the match after this. They made the quotes on commentary. Shawn Michaels' head was completely taken out of the match. Sid, this was his heel turn, I guess, or tweener, whatever the fuck Sid was. While Shawn was checking on Jose, Sid said, fuck that, came out, grabbed Shawn, drug him in the ring, chokeslam, powerbomb later, we got a new champ. Crowd didn't care. There was no babyface sympathetic heat for Shawn. They pretty much got laughed at by the New Yorkers, and closed the show with Sid celebrating with Vlad, the superfan, at ringside. Fist bumps and all. I knew he could do it, baby, from one of the biggest superfans of all time, and that's it. That's how we went off Survivor Series 96. I love this match. Just the spectacle part of it.
Yeah, and the nostalgia part of it, and but then, like I said to you off air, like, this was meant to be Vader. And I think I might have preferred it if it was Vader. Because from what I hear, that the whole point was like Shawn would lose it to Vader, and then Vader would lose it back to Shawn in the Alamo Dome, but they wanted Shawn to lose it to a big monster to build, like, the heroes.
Going into Brett.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But Shawn wouldn't work with Vader again after SummerSlam because he was a pussy, and it ended up being Sid. I bet Vader was kicking the locker in backstage. It was like, fuck, should have been me.
Or like, how do you think that locker felt backstage after that Raw where Vince, or where Shawn said he lost his smile, vacated the belt, and it was all for nothing anyway? Oof.
But they had to rush him out. I bet they had to rush him out of that arena.
They had to rush him out of that building like they had to rush fucking Jim Cornette and Jerry Lawler out of the ECW arena when they made that shot.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to be back there for that.
Oof.
Just this sad little Shawn Michaels, just like, oh, pity me. Pity you, and knock your fucking teeth out, mate.
Professor Tennant, ultimately, what do you grade Survivor Series 96?
In ring, I'd grade it probably C, but nostalgia B+.
I'm right there with you. In ring, I'm going to be a little more lenient just because Brett and Shawn saved it, and the psychology... Brett and Austin saved it in ring, and the Shawn Sid match psychology-wise. I'm going to give it a B- in ring, and I'm going to give it spectacle-wise an A- because I'm a mark for this show. I don't care.
There you go.
At least I'm honest. And that was that. We are not
Travis,
through.
we're going.
Go ahead.
Go on.
No, I was just going to say we're not through with the retros for 2019, though.
No, we're not. Nope. Because next time we're going, we flipped a coin before we came on air, and we're going to Starcade 97. And count your lucky stars, because it could have been December to Dismember.
Yeah, one of the most, well, both of them, most infamous pay-per-views of all time. We're heading to WCW again next time right here. Look for You Went Solo Iron Man style. That's dropping around this time too. The brand new Union Smack UK edition is up. I'm going to be talked off air. I'm going to be jumping on there more in the new year. Both of us back. No more omnibuses, hopefully. Matt can get a break in his voice. This has been it's been another year in the books for us pretty much, man. I know it's not our official last episode this year, but man, we're just knocking them out.
Yep, knocking them out. 2 years down. Hopefully X amount of years to come, Travis.
Most definitely. One more time, Matt. Where can everyone catch you and all that good stuff?
You can catch me on Twitter at The Perfect Tenant. You can log on to our online shop, unionsmack.bigcartel.com, to pick up the official Union Smack merchandise, t-shirts, Hibiki TMD t-shirt, Reset Button t-shirt, Tenant Talks t-shirt, Union Smack Hall of Fame t-shirt. Christmas messages will be up on the channel the week before Christmas. You can just listen to everything we've done this year. Just have a little Union Smack omnibus of your own, and go back and listen to everything we've done this year, retro, NXT UK omnibus, and otherwise. And yeah, we'll be back before Christmas with Starcade 97 and the Union Smack Hall of Fame back in 2020.
And look for our jolly little Christmas messages coming up in the coming weeks. As always, on Twitter at the Hibiki TMD. Everything Matt just said. I know everyone here in the U.S. is stuffed from Thanksgiving. Your pants were a little tight. You might have had to buy new ones. Sometimes they might be a little long. Pull them up. You don't want to show off your furnace. And thong. We'll see you right here next week.